Bettor Sports Betting is your home for picks, props, and futures for tonight's action. Bettor Sports Betting wants to know what picks you're playing tonight. Tell us in the live chat on YouTube, Twitter, and the Bettor Sports Network app. This is Bettor Sports Betting with Fantasy Alarm's Dan Servodidio.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome in here to the Bettor Sports Betting Show on Bettor Sports Network and Fantasy Alarm, the YouTubes, the Twitter, the BSN app, wherever you guys are joining in. Appreciate you jumping in here on a Thursday afternoon. Got James Grande with me today on the show. Talk some Thursday night football bets, talk some college football week 6 picks, and talk some, postseason odds for the divisional series. What's up, man?
What's up? We had a good last Thursday with the Lions and the Packers game.
Listen, the past few Thursdays, we've been hitting on some picks. So.
Yeah, we have. So happy to be back. I think this game is getting a lot of crap and warranted because the Bears won, at least because one half of the game, right? Not because both halves. I think everyone, Washington's a solid team. They're nothing to write home about. But Sam Howell, whether he's good or bad, is exciting, right? Even when he's bad, he's exciting. Even when he's good, when he's good, he's exciting. He's an exciting player. And, I think we saw Justin Fields kind of show up last week. Oh, crap, my job might be on the line if I don't play some good football. So I think this game's going to be a little more fun than a lot of people are making it out to be. Maybe that's just me being optimistic because Thursday Night Football is not always great, Servo, and I'm just hoping for, listen, I've been watching a lot of bad football this year because the team that I root for that I will not name at this time has played nothing but bad football. So, at this point, anything could be better than watching that team. So, it's a great day to be great, and I think that's what Washington and the Chicago Bears are going to be.
Yeah, well, if you're a Bears fan, maybe you disagree and say that they're worse than your team, but who knows? But yeah, so either way, it's football on a Thursday night, so we'll be watching, and it's fun to have some bets and some player props going too, as you guys are setting fantasy or DFS lineups too. So we'll give out some picks here, but yeah, it's the only meaningful. We got two small college football games tonight, but this is only the meaningful sports going on tonight because all 4 wild card series end in a 2-0 sweep.
Dude.
By the way, we got to start with some postseason odds here for the divisional series because the last time you were on, last Thursday on this show, we had the regular season end. We had all 4 wild card series end. So we didn't even get your take on any of these matchups, but I don't know. Crazy last 2 days, just seeing, and it hasn't been all the home teams winning these series. We had the Diamondbacks and the Rangers both went on the road, sweep those series. So, but yeah, been a fun last 2 days in the baseball world, and no games today.
Well, I'm not sure if the Rangers were actually on the road. If you saw the attendance in Tampa, I'm not sure.
That was a neutral site.
That is, what are we doing? If you're Tampa Bay, I understand the Bucks are in town, but you can't just. So I've been to the Trop and it's a dump. It is. I don't love going there, but it's a playoff game, right? You gotta go. So the fun.
The early day games didn't help either. The fact that
it didn't.
Crowds,
no,
which I guess baseball knew what they were doing. They're like, there's not going to be a strong crowd anyway. Let's just put this one as the first game of the day.
Oh, poor freaking Tampa. But you know what? Maybe they're used to it's been a lot of early exits for Tampa the last few years, and I know they get a lot of praise for how they do things. But after a while, it's it's great to get into the postseason, but when you win 98 games or whatever you do every year, you should probably advance into the postseason further than you have. So I understand it. But I did think if the Rangers got the pitching, and I think that's, just a preview ahead. I think if the Rangers continue to get the pitching that they got from a Cy Young contender prior to the injury, Nathan Eovaldi and Jordan Montgomery, who has pitched well everywhere he's been. That series, The Rangers have just as good of an offense as Baltimore, maybe better. I think if, Baltimore's bullpen has obviously been better, but, elephant in the room is the closer being there. Felix Bautista is, the main reason why Baltimore was that good. If the Rangers get good pitching, I think we could see, and I think that's why you see basically even odds in that series. I actually do favor the Rangers. Baltimore's really young, so I would say the Rangers would be my favorite in that series. Servo, the Twins. I mean, we've talked like.
You think they're live?
Dude, I said this, and I'm going to find the clip. I'm not going to get it yet because I want this to play out a little, maybe get a little more legs. If they make the ALCS, then I'll bring it up. But I thought the Twins were live to represent the American League early on, especially when we saw the evolution of Pablo Lopez and from Pablo Lopez and Joe Ryan, how good they were early. Like,
yeah, and Sonny Gray being lights out the last 2 months.
Dude, in the postseason, if you get good pitching, you can beat anybody. And if they get good pitching, their closer throws 117 miles an hour at the end of games, and the two-seam starts on one side of your screen and ends on the other. Like, good luck beating teams like that. I think
they have a really strong bullpen with like a ton of hard throwers. So
really good.
And you can have Duran possibly going like 2 innings too to close out.
I would not be surprised if we're looking at the Dodgers as the only favorite to advance in their series. How about that? I'll say like that. I wouldn't be surprised. Now, I'm not outright like picking against the Braves because I think that would be kind of silly. I'm also not like outright picking against the Astros. I do think the Twins may have the horses in the rotation. We'll see if Byron Buxton comes back for this series. He wasn't on the initial playoff roster, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Dodgers are the only favorites to advance.
Yeah, listen, the Twins getting back Royce Lewis and Correa too for the wild card series was huge. I mean, we saw Lewis hit 2 homers in that first game. Correa made really good defensive stop and hit like an RBI triple or something in the second game. So yeah, and if their pitching is going to pitch like that, then they are very live against the Astros. Which, listen, I give them credit, but I'm not totally scared of their starting pitching rotation. And it's like I know Valdez and Javier have like gotten it done for the most part, but there are a lot of their underlying metrics, and you know this because we bet against them at times, during the regular season where you thought maybe they'd have regression come in at certain spots. So yeah, the Twins are definitely live in that series, and yeah, the Rangers, if they get Montgomery and Eovaldi, who by the way was really struggling since the injury, but he put together a really good start in that game. I picked against him because in the first 5 innings in that game yesterday because I thought his struggles would continue, but he's and he's got that postseason experience with the Red Sox, so he's been there. The Rangers are definitely, and their offense, you mentioned like the Orioles, young team, young offense, they're very talented obviously, but the Rangers, they got a number of guys that have been in the postseason, have this pressure experience, won't shy away from starting the series on the road in Baltimore. So yeah, they're live too. I'm a Phillies fan, but I saw the Phillies beat the Braves last year in the NLDS, and I do think they can do it again. So and we just saw Aaron Nola have a really good start last night. If they get Wheeler and Nola pitching like that to start the series against the Braves, before they even go back to Citizens Bank Park for home field, it could be, if it's like last year, we had a 1-1 split in Atlanta in that series. Phillies went back to Philadelphia and then finished out the series. Could be a similar situation where if the Phillies do steal a game in game 1 or 2, that they got the advantage going back to their home park where their crowd is electric, as we all saw. I do think the Dodgers, though, they're heavy favorites here, like minus 205 on the series odds there. I wouldn't bet it, but I do think that they are just a step above the Diamondbacks, especially with the Diamondbacks. Like they got kind of lucky, I think, in game 1, surviving the Brandon Pfaadt start where he only lasted 2 2/3 innings. But Gallen, bounced back from a rough first inning yesterday and put together a good start. But outside of Gallen, their pitching kind of worries me. So I do think the Dodgers have. I agree with you. I think they are the most likely series favorite to advance in this DS series.
Yeah, dude, pretty much. You just laid it out. In the Braves, question marks on the rotation. The Diamondbacks have question marks. Not that the Dodgers don't, because they do have some question marks, like Kershaw.
Their offense, though.
Yeah, and that's. Well, you can say that about the Braves. The Braves just had the most historic offensive season of all time, at least in terms of home runs. And, they have the first guy ever to go 40-70. Not a bad, not a bad person to have atop your lineup.
Yeah.
But even Houston, Framber's been a question mark for a lot of the year. They do have Verlander, but after Framber, Verlander, what's to come? There's a lot of question marks in the final 8. I think, it's Orioles had 100 wins this year, but their pitching staff kind of stinks. And I shouldn't say their staff. Their rotation is kind of Arizona's in this series with Brendan Pfaadt was their game 1 starter, as you mentioned. There's a lot of question marks. I do think that there's going to be a lot of juice on Philadelphia, as you and I were talking about before we hopped on, and as you just talked about it too, because it is a different game. If they steal one in Atlanta, I mean, it's a different game. Heading back to Philly, where Trey Turner plays like a prime Barry Bonds. So yeah, I mean, it's it's going to be.
Don't throw those steroid allegations on Trey Turner that.
Minus the sans the steroids, sans the steroids. How about Pittsburgh Pirates version of Barry Bonds?
Okay, I'm good with that.
Still almost a 40-40 guy at that time.
Or Mariners A-Rod or.
yeah, Mariners A-Rod. Well, I mean, we don't.
Well, we don't know. Yeah, we don't.
A-Rod is I feel pretty good looking at the Bonds pictures where he looks like a toothpick in Pittsburgh.
Oh, yeah.
And
he
then
was stealing. He was like Ronald Acuna. He was stealing bags left and right.
Yeah, and he's skinny. A-Rod was tall and skinny, but you can see early on he was getting some muscle where Bonds it took a while. Then his head was massive and you just even though he hasn't been proven guilty in court, I digress there. But yeah, I mean if I'll just run it down. Here's my winners. You ready, Servo?
Let's do it.
Rangers minus 105. Twins plus 135. I'm going to pick them outright. Twins plus 135. Dodgers minus 205. I'm sorry. In a tightly contested series.
Don't do it to me.
A series that possibly goes 7 minus 170 for Atlanta. So I look, I could see that series going either way. I think that's going to be maybe the most competitive series. Maybe the most fun series altogether. But I'll take the Braves and the Dodgers to battle it out in the NL.
Well, listen, to your point about the Phillies Braves series, if you I'm looking on DraftKings now, but obviously you could shop around different sports books for series spread odds and all that. Phillies plus 1.5 games, so that they're losing by just one game, going 7. It's minus 180. So the odds are kind of in their favor to keep this one close and not lose in 6 games. Right. And if you looking on the other side of that, if you want to look at just looking at if you want to bet on the Braves, minus 0.5 game, it's plus 155. So yeah, interesting there. I do think I'm with you on the Rangers. I have them. I think I have them advancing past the Orioles now. I got a lot of. I'm living here in the DC area. I got a lot of friends that have, are Orioles fans or Maryland based, but it's. I just think it might come to an end. I feel like this whole year, I kind of expect them to slow down a little bit. They never did, but I always thought they were kind of 1 year too early. With all the young pieces that they have. I mean, give them credit. They were so good this year, but I always thought maybe they're just 1 year too early. Be awesome to see them, go to the World Series, obviously. I'm with you on the Dodgers, and I've been going back and forth on the Astros and the Twins.
Yeah, it's a good series. It's a good series.
I'd probably lean Astros, but that might be one game to game. I'll probably pick the Twins on the money line as underdogs,
Yeah.
And then I gotta go with the Phillies in that series for sure. But yeah, it'll be fun. These games start up Saturday. We will not have a show before that. I mean, we'll have a show tomorrow, but it's going to be a lot of football, NFL talk. But throughout next week, we got games going on every day, so we'll definitely give it out some picks and bets for these games on next week's shows. All right, let's talk some football. We got Thursday Night Football tonight, an actual real game going on tonight. So we'll give out some picks here. And by the way, over on the BettorCast app, you can watch Thursday Night Football along with our BettorCast app and our crew there. You download, submit your picks now for Bears Commanders. No purchase or subscription necessary. Always free to play. Win tickets that could be redeemed for authentic NFL signed collectibles. You can download the free BettorCast app in the Apple app and Google Play stores. Must be at least 18 years of age. All right, let's dive into this Thursday Night Football game. Chicago Bears at the Washington Commanders. Seeing the latest odds here. Oh, love this NFL blitz. This little blitz matchup here. Awesome. Sam Howell looking jacked, going against another jacked Justin Fields. The total is, as you can see there, the over-under at 44.5, and the Commanders are 6-point favorites for this game. I'll let you take it any direction you want to start out here. Game pick, player prop, whatever. What do you got going here?
Yeah, so we'll start player prop. Something I'm pretty confident about tonight. Me and the world are probably pretty confident in Washington tonight. I think Washington covers. I think Washington wins outright. So that's definitely my lean tonight. But I love Sam Howell against this Chicago secondary. You look at everything to do with the Bears right now, and that's, they lost to their defensive coordinator. We don't have official word on what that is, but obviously some bad reports those have obviously died down so we'll stay neutral on what is to come. But the defense has looked terrible. They've allowed the 6th most passing yards, and through 4 games they've allowed 10 touchdowns. Only the Broncos have allowed more through the air through the first 4 games. And when you look at it, the only quarterback that hasn't thrown for 3 touchdowns in a game was Baker Mayfield, who still in that game threw for 300 yards. So they've allowed 3 300-yard passers and 3 guys to throw for 3 touchdowns. Now, Patrick Mahomes is one of those guys, and Russell Wilson has looked pretty good for all the crap that Denver has gotten this year, and the 70 points hung up on them. Russell Wilson has played pretty well, all things considered. He threw 3 touchdowns. Jordan Love throwing 3 touchdowns against them was probably a little shocking. But their secondary can't stop anybody right now. So I like Sam Howell over 1.5 touchdown passes, and you can get that at plus money over on DraftKings tonight. I think Sam Howell, for what it's worth, has looked good and bad at times. But the one thing we can say is he's thrown a lot, 140 times through 4 games. He hasn't, had that, I think, the breakout game. He looked really gritty against your Eagles last week. I think he let that come back at the end of the game. But he's only got over this number once against Denver, who has been bleeding touchdowns. But it just is a game where Chicago has been better against the rush slightly. And I say that just because they haven't allowed as many touchdowns against the run as they have against the pass. They still rank near the bottom in terms of DVP against running backs as well. But I think Sam Howell has his breakout performance tonight on Thursday Night Football. I'm going to go over 1.5 touchdowns for plus money.
All right. I'll stick with the Sam Howell vibe here, and I'll go with his rushing yards over 13.5 over on FanDuel minus 122. This is a guy that's, coming out of college from North Carolina. He is a true dual threat running guy, can use his legs as a true weapon. People might not realize or remember, but he ran for over 800 yards in his last season at North Carolina. Last year, his one game, he ran for 35 yards when he did get in. And this year, we're starting to see him more, get involved running wise. He has been, his week one, his rushing yards have gone up each week. Week one was only 11 rushing yards, but then he had 13 in week 2, 18 in week 3, and 40 last week. Carrying it more, starting to carry it more too. He's only carried it 11 total times, but he's averaging 7.4 yards per carry when he does. So this is a guy that can, whether it's not usually design runs, but when he scrambles, he usually gets he can get 10 yards on one run. So to hit this over, I think we're looking, and if he runs it twice, I think we're hitting this over. And the Bears, they haven't really contained quarterbacks running wise as much as you might think. I mean, we know what their defense is shaky in terms of against the pass, also against the run, but they allowed Russell Wilson to run for 13 yards last week, but Wilson, isn't really a rushing mobility threat. Baker Mayfield, also not a guy that runs a lot. He ran for 17 yards against them. Mahomes, more of a rushing threat, but also not as much as Sam Howell, had 29 rushing yards against this defense. And Jordan Love only had 12 yards. That was back in week 1. But, I think that was, it's Love's first start. I don't think he was looking to run much anyway. So I think Sam Howell can get to the over here. We only need probably 2 scrambles and he gets the over 13.5.
Yeah, and the Bears are not getting to the quarterback either. So, if they're just going to flush him out of the pocket and he's just going to have all day to throw, I mean, we're going to see some running lanes for him too. So I like Sam Howell a lot. I like the rushing yards. I like the passing yards. And we both took a quarterback rushing prop here tonight, Servo, because I also think the quarterback on the other side of the game, Justin Fields, is going over his rushing prop. 47.5 yards. You get that at minus 130 on DraftKings. And you talked about the Bears not containing quarterbacks. Well, Washington thus far, 131 yards allowed to opposing quarterbacks. That's the third most in the league, only behind Dallas and Indianapolis. Almost 6 yards per carry this year for quarterbacks. And although Justin Fields hasn't run, I think, as much as we probably anticipated, in the 2 games that he has, 47 and 59 yards, including, and I'm kind of surprised in that Denver game he didn't run more, although he had his best career game passing. So I guess that, can contribute to that. Washington just hasn't been that offense or that defense to allow 28 of 35, 335 yards and four touchdowns. That is not what Justin Fields is going to do through the air. They're going to have to run the football, and Washington's defense has been most susceptible to the quarterback on the ground. It's they're literally been the one weakness for their defense this year. So I'm looking for Fields to run a lot tonight. I'm going to take the over rushing yards and count my money at the end of the night.
Well, all right. So you kind of broke down a little bit about how he might not have as much passing success, but I'm going to his passing yards. I did look at his rushing yards too, so I like your pick there. I do think this passing yards line is just way too low for me. 189.5.
Yes.
And that's on FanDuel, which is lower than what it is on DraftKings and other sites where it's at 192, 193. But the 189.5 is a really good spot, I think, to take the over. As you mentioned last week in that easy matchup against Denver, he threw for 335 yards. But I think it's a good sign that he was kind of throwing more, 35 attempts in there. Maybe, he's taken upon himself to really make more plays, whether it is rushing or passing wise. And he faces a Commanders defense here that has been solid, but they are allowing 230 passing yards per game. 3 of 4 opposing quarterbacks have at least 200 passing yards against this defense. The only one that didn't was back in week 1. It was Josh Dobbs in his first start for the Cardinals after coming off the Browns practice squad. So I'm kind of throwing that one out. But the other quarterbacks, we saw Russell Wilson throw for 300 plus. Jalen Hurts last week, 300 plus. Josh Allen went, he had over 200, but that was a game they were leading by a lot. It wasn't throwing a lot. But this game, I think Fields, and the spread is kind of one of the other factors here. And it kind of plays into both our picks, where I think he's going to be running and throwing more and trying to make as many plays while the Bears are probably trailing. It's a 6-point spread. And if they're playing from behind, Fields is going to have to do a lot, whether he is throwing it or passing it. So I think the game script favors, more passing yards for this matchup. I mean, getting to 190 passing yards is not hard to do in the NFL right now. So I think Fields can do it tonight.
Yeah, I mean, he's done it in 3 of 4. And, I think you're right when it's like Washington's secondary isn't elite, but it's also it's faced really good quarterbacks, Fields, and he does with the game script in his pocket where they're likely to be trailing. He's likely to throw and run around, and really good for fantasy owners everywhere, and for bettors.
And our producer, Heavy T Tyler Soto, chiming in on our chat here. Let me know, because this helps out my prop, helps out the vibes for it. We got the Bears activating their offensive lineman Tevin Jenkins off the IR and expected to play tonight. So a little bit more protection for Fields, more time to throw. So that definitely helps out things, for his rushing too, just having more protection. I feel like they're going to probably design some runs more for him in this game, but we'll see. So yeah, we're both on some Fields props. We're both on some Sam Howell props. I'll throw another one here, a game bet, because we have yet to touch this game. I'm not touching the spread, honestly. I'm just staying away from it. But I do think this is going to be a lower scoring first half. So give me the first half under 22.5 on FanDuel. So Thursday night football first half unders are 23 and 13 since 2021. That's a 64% hit rate. Night game first half unders since 2021, also a 60% hit rate. So those trends are in your favor. But either way, I think both offenses are going to try to come out with a run focused game plan. The Bears, obviously you kind of broke it down, but I think Fields is going to take a little bit of, maybe a quarter or two to kind of figure things out. I think later in the game, we see more passing from him. But I think the Washington Commanders for sure are going to try to feed Brian Robinson and lean on the run there and control the possessions, control the game via their ground game. So I think this is going to be a first half lower scoring game. 22.5 is kind of a weird number, but I think we can still get 3 touchdowns and it goes under. So going that way.
Yeah, I like the under first half. I would probably bet under.
I looked at that, but I don't know. It's it was kind of in the middle range for me.
Yeah, I mean, if last week's version of Justin Fields shows up, then this is probably a high scoring game, because I think Washington's going to have no problem moving the ball a lot of tonight. With given. Bears are 31st against the pass, 31st against the run this year. So take your pick on which approach you want to go with. But if we're getting that first few weeks, Justin Fields, where, he's looking more so like a team that they're going to draft a quarterback, then I think the under is in play. We'll see. Washington's pass rush could obviously disrupt a lot of the things the Bears are doing offensively. I don't know if Khalil Herbert's going to have as good of a game as he had last week, because he looked really good and was clearly the running back one over Roschon Johnson. So I like the under first half. I don't have it in my bets, but I would probably ultimately bet the under for the game. But I like that. I have an under as well here, Servo. I have an under Cole Kmet, 3.5 receptions here. Now it's getting juiced. I originally saw it at -130 on DraftKings Sportsbook, and it just continues to climb. It's now -145 on DraftKings Sportsbook. But because Washington just does not let tight ends do anything. This year, there are only 3 teams that have allowed less receptions to the tight end position. That's the Steelers, the Saints, and the Browns. Washington has had many more targets against them, but many less successful, obviously, or success rate against them. They've only allowed 8 yards per reception over this span and 83 yards total, 13 receptions to the tight end position in 4 games. I know Cole Kmet's coming off a monster game. I know the whole Chase Claypool saga continues to develop. He's going to be left home, and he's not even probably ever going to take another step for the Bears because this trade is a disaster, and he's going to be dealt again for not nearly the value that they gave up for him. But that just seems like the Bears are being the Bears again, duh, Bears. But I just don't like this spot for Cole Kmet. I think, if anything, you look at the receivers have had a ton of success. I mean, look at last week with A.J. Brown against Washington. It's been the receivers having all this success. Washington's allowed over 800 yards to opposing receivers. They've already allowed 6 touchdowns to opposing receivers. Tight ends are doing nothing. So give me under 3.5 receptions for Cole Kmet. The public is obviously on the side I am because the line continues to rise, but I'm comfortable going here at minus 145. I don't think Cole Kmet's going to have that.
Yeah, I'm with that because I looked at his receiving yards under 2. Didn't ultimately go there, but yeah, I think you just look at the track record of this defense against good tight ends this season already. So yeah, I'm with you on there. I do think I didn't throw it out either, but maybe this is one to go to is DJ Moore's receiving yards over, because I do think if there is a way for the Bears to move the ball through the air, it is going to be a DJ Moore game and not really Cole Kmet as much. So, all right, my last pick for this game, I'm going with Brian Robinson over 15.5 rush attempts, minus 140 on DraftKings. As I mentioned with the kind of the leaning with the first half under, I think the Commanders are going to try to feed him early, give him a lot of touches to control the game, control possessions, keep the ball out of Fields' hands because he is dangerous. So I think we're going to see a lot of carries here from Brian Robinson. And you look at his carries this year. So he's had 16 plus rush attempts in 2 of 4 games. The 2 overs came in their 2 wins against Denver and Arizona. He had 19 and 18 carries. The 2 unders came in his Washington's 2 losses against the Bills and Eagles, only a 10 and 14. Still double-digit carries in both, but the game script and game flow, especially in the second half, didn't lead to as many carries. They were throwing a lot more. So I think this, the spread, again, at 6, I think the Commanders should be playing with a lead, especially late. So I think it's going to lead to a lot of Robinson touches. And the Commanders' offense, their backfield, it's Brian Robinson getting the lion's share of carries over Antonio Gibson, who's being used more as a receiver out of the backfield. But it's Robinson getting the majority of carries for this offense. So I think he can have success here and go over his rush attempts, 15.5.
He's being used more as a returner than anything. My man's out here. They're not even. He had the one. Gibson had the one game against Buffalo where he had the 5 targets, but they're not even. It's been Robinson's backfield.
Getting almost as many targets as him too so far.
Yep. Yeah, I saw he runs a route 31% of the time, which I think is more than we ever expected Brian Robinson to, because he's never done it. Like, he never has been a pass catcher out of the backfield. But that just goes to show you what Eric Bieniemy sees in him. He sees that this is their RB1. I love that call. I love the attempts because we've seen Brian Robinson since last year, since he returned. Like, they are not afraid to give this guy 20 plus carries in a game. Like, they go to this guy a lot. So I love that call, Servo. I got one more, and it's on the same side, same team. I like Terry McLaurin anytime touchdown. Just going to give out one this week. I think did we each give out one last week? I don't know. I know David Montgomery was my I know we gave out the Monty touchdown, anytime touchdown. I'm going to go Terry McLaurin this week. Plus 130 over on DraftKings. And it's pretty much reverting back to the Sam Howell point that I made. Like, Chicago has allowed 10 touchdowns through the air this year. They cannot defend anybody. They're 32nd against the pass. They're 32nd or 31st against the pass. They're 32nd against the run. They're allowing a boatload of yards. They've already allowed 5 touchdowns to receivers specifically. So give me Terry McLaurin coming off his game last week, which, you saw firsthand. Like, he didn't score, but he, against a great Eagles secondary, 8 for 86 and 10 targets. He's been the clear number one option for Sam Howell this year. 6 targets or more in 3 straight games. He only has the 1 touchdown against Denver, but I think he makes that 2 tonight against the Chicago.
Yeah, and they have the Bears have multiple injuries in the secondary too. They have Jalen Johnson, the corner, and safety Eddie Jackson both out. And Jaquan Brisker, their other safety, questionable with a hamstring, so we'll see if he's active or not. But I just think that those injuries, I mean, it kind of goes back to your Sam Howell over passing touchdowns too. I think when they're in the red zone, it could be more passing scores than rushing. I do think McLaurin probably has the best chance of catching one of those 2 attached touchdowns from Sam Howell. So good call in there. If you guys have any of your own picks, by the way, and you're watching, definitely chime in here on the chat. We'll get to those as they come in, see where we're leaning on some of these picks. I do see a fantasy question in the chat here. Definitely hit up our Discord and ask our fantasy football experts over at Fantasy Alarm to get some fantasy advice, because we're just focusing on betting on this show. But definitely hit us up in the Discord. Priceless Pigeon. Thanks for tuning in though and chiming in. All right, let's now turn to some college football week 6, and we got the BettorEdge contest still going on again here for week 6. And if you think you know college football, you can prove it over at the BettorEdge. You compete against me in the Servo 7 contest. It's a college football totals competition powered by BettorEdge. You make the most correct picks in this free competition, you get paid out. There's about 20 games or so that you just pick 7 of those, over-unders. So pick your favorite games, whatever, leans that you love. You enter by signing up on BettorEdge at bettoredge.com/better. Just search for the Servo 7 competition there, and use promo code BETTOR, BETTOR, to get $20 off when you $20 instantly when you sign up and verify. No deposit required over on BettorEdge. So free money. All right, let's one of my picks for this contest. And last week, I think it was LSU Ole Miss. I gave out the over, and we saw about 90 plus points scored in that game. So I think that one hit. I ultimately, I forget who did win, but I think I went like 5-2 with my Servo 7. So trying to get back up.
I was gonna say, did Bernard get lucky again? Did Bernard get lucky again?
There was someone else that won it, but congrats to whoever did.
Okay.
But my pick for this Servo 7, you can fade it, you can go with it. I'm going with the LSU, going back to LSU. LSU Missouri over 64.5. Listen, I broke down this LSU, poor defense, great offense last week, and I just got to keep going back to it because LSU games this year, 5-0 to the over. All 5 games have hit the over. Average of 75 total points scored in these games. And their games are consistently high scoring because, yes, they have a high-powered offense with Jaden Daniels, a really good dual-threat quarterback, a couple of future NFL receivers and Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas tearing secondaries up. But their defense is also very poor, been exposed by multiple good offenses already. And I think Missouri has the firepower, especially passing-wise, to really light this secondary up and, force LSU to keep scoring. I think it's going to be another high total game here. Missouri, they have Luther Burden, a really good top wide receiver talent in the country. Brady Cook, the quarterback, has the offense clicking. Missouri 4-1 to the over too. So both teams have been trending to the over this season. And Missouri's only under came against their game against a bad Middle Tennessee team back in week 2. But every other time they've gone over because as good as their offense is, Missouri's pass defense is also very shaky, below average. They've also yet to face an offense as good as LSU's, but the offenses that they have faced, they they've allowed, like 30 plus points in most games. It's like 25 to 30, but again, they haven't faced LSU yet. So I'm looking at this over here to be one of my picks for the BettorEdge contest, but also, this I think it's at like -110 on DraftKings. I'd take that. Definitely looking at, probably 70 plus points again in this game.
Does Brian Kelly still have his Southern accent, or did he drop that?
I haven't heard any like press conferences with him. I feel like he's maybe dropped it at this point.
Okay.
Yeah. By the way, with this game, I'm not giving it out here. I think I might be betting it though. I would take Missouri as underdogs. I think they have a good chance of winning this outright at home. Because LSU losing to Ole Miss, then they now have 2 losses. Their chances of getting the college football playoff are basically over. You wonder about the vibes and kind of the motivation for some of these guys that, again, are going to be in the NFL next year. So I worry about that. Missouri, playing really well. And at home, I do think they're going to put it to LSU and their bad defense. Yes, that's one of my picks. By the way, we got Mulroy chiming in here on the chat. A couple picks he likes. Colorado over 4.5 touchdowns scored at +140. Or he likes the Colorado over team total at 33.5.
Perfect segue, Servo. Perfect segue into your next pick, right? Because we got Arizona State, Colorado here, and I don't know if Servo is going to agree there, Mulroy, because
the Colorado offense can still put up 33.5 points. Go over that, but I got Arizona State to cover here because I've said it numerous times on this show. Whether I'm picking overs in Colorado games, whether I'm picking against Colorado against the spread, their defense is terrible, and it's not getting any better. They seriously lack any top-end talent now that Travis Hunter is still out. Their run defense is one of the worst in the country, and the book is out on how to expose this defense. And USC did it last week. They didn't even need to run it more because they have Caleb Williams. They have a really good offense to put up points. Colorado covered last week against USC, but it was in the second half where USC, it seems like, just kind of took their foot off the pedal. Didn't seem like they were caring much, and their defense is also very shaky. So I'm not totally surprised at that. But we all saw what Oregon did to Colorado. Overall, though, my view on Colorado, as good as an electric as their offense is with Shadur Sanders, again, their defense is terrible. But the every game, basically, since they upset TCU, and even before that, every single game they've played this year has had a huge, hype around it, marquee matchups. They just played Oregon and USC, where people thought, oh, what if they win this game? Game days been at their games. And now they have to play, Arizona State, who isn't good, and Colorado should beat them. But I just view this as like a classic, letdown where they're probably going to, ignore and look past Arizona State. But every team that plays Colorado, even though they're not viewed as good as like a Georgia or Alabama, this is like the Super Bowl for like Arizona State team that is just looking for a couple wins against marquee teams. They're going to be coming in here hyped at home at night too for Arizona State. It's a legit home field advantage. Arizona State, by the way, they've covered as underdogs in each of their past 2 games. Covered against USC, covered against Cal. I see this 4.5 line too, by the way. This is a classic, just like begging the public to take Colorado, because it's like, Colorado should win by 2 touchdowns in this game. But listen, I think it's that small for a reason. I think the sharper side is on Arizona State. I also see it moving a little bit to 3.5 in some places. So I got the 4.5. Arizona State can make this a game. I do think they have a chance of winning outright too. They got a really good running back, Cam Scataba, that's going to, I think, again, expose a bad Colorado rush defense and make this more of a game than you might think. So, yeah, give me Arizona State.
Similar to what happened when they played Colorado State, right? They were 3 touchdown favorites in that game.
And they were losing and really needed a late comeback to even push it to overtime in that game.
Let's head over to a matchup. Still ACC. Right. Still ACC. I assume. I don't know these conferences in college football. Are there even?
This is still ACC.
Anymore?
Georgia Tech. Yeah.
There's not even conferences anymore. But Georgia Tech takes on Miami, Florida, not Miami, Ohio. They're obviously the better of the Miamis, right? That's what they said before the Miami Florida game. Yeah. What do you like in this game, Servo?
I'm taking Georgia Tech. Again, another underdog here. Listen, Georgia Tech, they're coming off a terrible loss against Bowling Green last week. 21-point favorites in there, and they lost outright. So I get the public and maybe the market is down on Georgia Tech, but I think this is a spot where they can cover and kind of surprise Miami here. Georgia Tech 2-1 against the spread as underdogs this season. It would have been 3-0 if Ole Miss didn't score late in that game to cover as 17-point favorites. So they could be 3-0 against the spread. But either way, they've played teams tough and are really battle tested. They had a close loss against Louisville to start the season. Played Ole Miss tough on the road, as I just said. Beat Wake Forest outright as underdogs on the road too. They're not going to back down from Miami here. And Miami has only faced one good team so far, one competent offense, and that was Texas A&M. Gave up 33 points to them. Georgia Tech, their offense is not really an issue this year with Haynes King shoring things up on that side of the ball, averaging 32 points per game. I think that they're gonna give it to Georgia Tech. This is a big spread, and it's obviously risky, and it's on the road. But Miami, another key thing for them that I'm just kind of looking for is I think this is a look ahead for them. I think they're going to even if they have a big lead, I do think late in the second half there might be resting guys and might be taking it easy because next week they have a matchup against North Carolina, who we could have both undefeated teams facing each other for the rights to be, one of the top ACC teams going forward. I think they might be a little game planning for that one already, looking ahead a little bit, taking Georgia Tech a little easy. Because Miami, they've lost to North Carolina 4 straight years, and 3 of those have come by 3 points or exactly 3 points. So I feel like they're motivated to win that game next week and might be looking past a little bit Georgia Tech here.
Yeah, I don't want to mess with that triple option that I assume Georgia Tech is still running because that's the
last time now.
No. Not. Oh, that's an upset. That's one of the most biggest.
Well, they gotta actually have a decent quarterback, Haynes King, who's slinging it around. So.
Okay, that's unfortunate. That's an upset. Speaking of teams that you don't think are going to upset, we have Notre Dame taking on Louisville as 6-point favorites, and you like Notre Dame to cover that number.
Yeah, give me Notre Dame to win this and cover the spread as favorites. Listen, Louisville's undefeated for this game coming in, but I'm just not buying them yet because they really haven't played many good teams. Their best win was last week, a 13-10 victory over North Carolina State. And Notre Dame played NC State earlier this year, beat them by 21. So that's like the common opponent. I instantly looked at that and saw, all right, I think Notre Dame's a tier above Louisville, and I think it's going to prove it here. Louisville's strength of schedule, by the way, is 71st in the country, even though they are undefeated. Notre Dame is 8th, much more battle-tested, have played a lot better teams overall. We saw them lose that last-second game against Ohio State 2 weeks ago. That's their only loss, but instead of that, they would be undefeated here. And they're 3-1 against the spread as favorites this year. And again, that loss to Ohio State, maybe you'd think like, all right, they'd have a letdown or whatever. But last week in their next game, they beat Duke on the road, covered in that game. So I don't see any letdown. They have USC coming next week, big game next week for Notre Dame. But this isn't really a look ahead either because Notre Dame, because they're an independent team, they don't have a conference. They need to win out going forward. They can't suffer any more losses if they want to be in the playoff. And so I think they're going to look to really prove and get a convincing win against an undefeated Louisville team. It's going to be a really good win on their resume. Their defense is legit. I think they can limit the Louisville offense here. And Sam Hartman, Audric Esteban, the offense can really stretch out a lead. So, yeah, give me Notre Dame on the road to cover as favorites here.
And in that Ohio State game, they let Ohio State win, right? They only had 10 players on the field. So
pretty much.
they said, Ohio State, we feel bad for you. We want Ryan Day to have this emotional speech about Lou Holtz after the game. So you go ahead and have this. We'll meet you back in the playoff later in the year when we have 11 players on the field for
right. Yeah, and in that game, if you watched it, and if I took Notre Dame plus 3.5, which they covered because it was a 3-point loss ultimately. But if you watch the game, Notre Dame should have won that game. Right. They let Ohio State drive late. Again, had 10 guys on the field late, but also Ohio State needed a couple of big plays to even get down to the goal line. So it could have easily been a Notre Dame win in that one.
Yeah, there was like a 4th and 15 or 4th and 18 on that drive, right? Yeah. I heard when there 10 players on the field what a trend. Final pick of the day. We have Oklahoma and Texas. Servo, you're looking at one half of this game. Talk to us about what half you like.
Yeah, so this is one of the big games, arguably the biggest game this weekend, the Red River rivalry. It's a huge game every year, Oklahoma versus Texas. Usually, so this is a risky bet because usually these games are shootouts. Usually we're having like 70, 80 points scored in these games. The total, though, is only at 60.5. I think that tells us something that this game only because listen, I gave out like an over on a 64.5. But like usually, like last year, years past, we've seen the totals for Oklahoma, Texas be like 65, close to 70 at times. I think that 60.5 is telling us that it's going to be a little bit more defensive than we might think. And I'm just looking at the first half because I do think the first half will be more defensive focused. We're going to have both teams, I think, both trying to establish the run early on because they both have good running games. But I think they're going to want to try to limit both offenses being on the field much, play a little possession game early on. Both defenses are going to have a really good game plan on how to slow things down, slow the explosive plays on both ends. I don't think either team wants to get into a shootout in this spot and risk, a 2-score deficit at any point where it might be tough to come back. So I do think, early on in the first half, I'm looking at the under 30.5. Texas defense is legit. They held Baylor and Kansas to just 20 combined points these last two games. Oklahoma's defense is also very much improved from last year. They got Brent Venables now in year 2 with his scheme that was, a top tier defense at Clemson in years past. So I think that Oklahoma and Texas are both going to really limit things on the defensive end and both offenses, just a little bit lower scoring in the first half. The second half can go crazy for all I care, but the first half, let's just get a lower scoring game.
Okay. I like it.
So those are my picks for week 6. Go check out later today, actually, in a couple minutes after we're done here, I will be posting a best bets article over on Fantasy Alarm. If you have the All Pro subscription, you can check that out. But I'll have game picks for Arkansas, Ole Miss, Maryland versus Ohio State, and the UCLA versus Washington State game. All three some good games too this weekend. So I'll have picks out for those. But hopefully you can cash on these free picks that I just gave out. So so that's week 6 college football. Again, we give out picks for Thursday Night Football early in the show. So if you missed that, go check that out. Rewind a little bit and check out some of our player props and game picks for Bears Commanders tonight. Talk some MLB postseason odds too if you missed that for the ALDS and NLDS starting up Saturday. James, been awesome stuff, man. Hopefully we have some different Sam Howell and Justin Fields props, but I think there's a way for all these to cash, right?
All of them are cashing, Servo. Each one.
All right, thanks for tuning in here. We'll be back tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern. Coming up later, by the way, Fantasy Alarm Game Day Preview with John and Pemba and Andrew Cooper up on Fantasy Alarm at 7 p.m. Eastern and on Bettor Sports Network at 7 p.m. Eastern, the high-stakes fantasy football show with Eric Balkman. So keep it locked here on Bettor Sports Network. And then check out the BettorCast at 8:15 p.m. Eastern, as I mentioned earlier. All right, everyone, good luck with your picks, and we'll catch you guys later.